There are 7 of them, 7 faces that have collectively sold out stadiums on 6 continents, graced the covers of Vogue, Time, and Rolling Stone, and broken more records than most artists will ever come close to touching. BTS isn't just a music act, they're a cultural event that rewrote the rules of global pop. But here's the thing about being in a group that massive. The world constantly tries to rank you. Who's the most talented? Who's the best dancer? And yes, who's the most handsome? It's a question that's been debated in every language on every platform for over a decade. Then Jimmy Fallon walked into the conversation, not with a poll, not with a ranking system, but with something far more specific, a direct answer delivered on one of the most watched late-night stages in the world, in front of the members themselves. The reaction from ARMY was immediate. Not outrage, something closer to stunned silence, followed by a very loud internet. So who did Fallon name? And more importantly, why does his explanation actually hold up? Let's get into it.
Number 7. The Quiet Storm. Suga. Min Yoongi was born on March 9, 1993, in Daegu, South Korea, a city in the country's southeastern region known for its distinct regional identity and its reputation for producing people with a particular kind of stubborn self-reliance. He grew up in a working-class household, the second son of parents who worked modest, unglamorous jobs, and by the time he was in middle school, he was already writing lyrics and producing music on his bedroom computer using software he downloaded without paying for it, because a licensed copy was financially out of reach. That is not a detail inserted for emotional effect. It is the structural foundation of who Suga became, both as an artist and as a visual figure inside one of the most image-obsessed industries on the planet. Because unlike most K-pop trainees who are recruited at least partly on the basis of appearance, Suga entered Big Hit Entertainment as a rapper. His audition was built entirely on lyrical skill and delivery. Nobody evaluating him in that room was thinking about magazine covers or fashion editorials. He was there to rap. That origin point matters enormously when you trace how his visual identity developed, because it developed outside of a conventional idol template. And that divergence is a significant part of what makes him visually distinctive. BTS debuted in June 2013, and within the group's structure, the official visual designation, the K-pop industry term for the member considered most conventionally attractive, who serves as a kind of front-facing aesthetic ambassador for the group, was given to Jin, the oldest member. That is the official, labeled position. But from the very beginning, fans and entertainment journalists started describing Suga in a parallel but separate visual language, not in the same category as the designated visual, but in a category that didn't have an easy existing name. The clearest way to describe it is a chic city aesthetic. Angular jawline, sharp, prominent cheekbones, pale complexion, deep-set eyes with strong orbital definition, and a default resting expression that reads as composed rather than closed. In 2013, the dominant K-pop visual template favored brightness, softness, and approachability. Suga fit none of those descriptors, which is precisely why he stood out. The visual that doesn't fit the template becomes the one you remember. By 2015 and 2016, as BTS began gaining serious momentum both domestically and in Southeast Asia, before their eventual global explosion, Suga's visual identity started crystallizing in a specific direction. He consistently appeared in darker, more editorial styling, strong silhouettes, monochromatic palettes, minimal accessories. While several of his bandmates leaned into softer or more youthful styling choices, Suga's image tracked towards something sharper and more deliberately mature. Korean fashion publications with serious editorial standards, not fan-voted idol spreads, but actual fashion journalism, began placing him in their pages. Appearances in Arena Home Plus and GQ Korea reflected decisions made by editors and photographers whose professional judgment is built on identifying faces that translate into compelling images. Those are not participation trophies. Those are editorial choices. And they say something specific about bone structure and photographic presence. In technical photography terms, the orbital region, the area surrounding the eyes, is one of the most significant factors in how a face reads through a lens. Strong orbital definition creates natural contrast between light and shadow, which gives a photograph visual depth without requiring heavy post-processing. Suga has pronounced orbital definition, and it is a structural feature rather than a product of styling or lighting choices. Photographers who have worked with him across multiple sessions have noted, in documented interviews and behind-the-scenes content, that his face requires very little technical intervention to achieve a strong image. The architecture of his face does the heavy lifting. In February 2020, BTS performed at Grand Central Terminal in New York City for a special episode of The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, a production that had been planned and coordinated for months, involving station closures, crowd management logistics, and multiple cameras capturing a concert environment inside one of America's most iconic public spaces. The performance aired on February 24, 2020. Thousands of fans gathered at the terminal. Fallon and his production team spent an extended period of time in direct proximity to all 7 members. Not a controlled studio handshake, not a brief red carpet greeting, but hours of filming across multiple setups in a real physical environment. That kind of sustained, real-world exposure produces a fundamentally different impression than watching a performance on a television monitor. Suga's physical presence in an uncontrolled environment has been commented on by multiple people who have interacted with him professionally. His fellow BTS members, across various documented variety show appearances and interview segments, have referenced the disconnect between how Suga looks on camera and how he reads in person, with the consistent note being that the in-person version is the stronger impression. That is a genuinely unusual reversal. The standard reality in entertainment is that professional lighting, high-resolution cameras, makeup, and post-production work in a person's favor. Most performers look more polished on-screen than off. The fact that Suga reportedly produces a stronger visual impact in real, unfiltered environments than in produced media is a specific and notable characteristic that multiple independent sources have described in consistent terms. His solo-created output under the name August D added another dimension to this conversation. The Dechuta music video, released in May 2020, was a production in which Suga played 2 separate characters, a Joseon-era king and a contemporary street figure, within a single narrative. The video accumulated over 200 million views on YouTube. Significantly, a portion of the conversation it generated came from people outside of the K-pop audience entirely. Film critics, cinematography-focused accounts, and general entertainment media discussed it as a competently executed short film with genuine production value. Within that broader conversation, Suga's screen presence, separate from his music, was repeatedly cited as a contributing factor to the video's effectiveness. That is a meaningful distinction. Being discussed as a compelling on-screen presence by people who are not predisposed to find you compelling is a different kind of validation than fan recognition. Suga built his visual identity the same way he built everything else, deliberately, without waiting for permission, and entirely on his own terms. From a borrowed piece of software in a bedroom in Daegu, to the editorial pages of GQ Korea, to the Grand Central Terminal stage that Jimmy Fallon watched from the side in the cold February air, the trajectory is consistent and the foundation is real. He has never been the loudest visual argument in any room BTS has entered, but he has consistently been one of the most durable ones.
And as specific and credible as that argument is, the 6 members still ahead of him in this countdown each brings something to this conversation that makes Fallon's eventual answer feel not just surprising, but genuinely earned.
Number 6, the one fashion called first, J-Hope. Jung Hoseok was born on February 18, 1994, in Gwangju, South Korea, the country's 6th largest city, and a place with a historically significant cultural identity rooted in artistic expression and political consciousness. He was not the kind of child who was discovered in a talent scouting event outside a shopping mall, which is the actual origin story of a surprisingly large number of K-pop idols. Jung Hoseok came up through street dance. He trained seriously in popping and locking as a kid, competed in local dance competitions, and built a physical discipline that was entirely self-directed before he ever walked into an entertainment company. He joined Big Hit Entertainment as a trainee and debuted with BTS in June 2013. And from the earliest days of the group's existence, his visual identity was the most immediately legible of the 7 members. Not because it was the most classical or the most editorial, but because it was the most kinetic. J-Hope's face does something specific when he performs, or when he is simply present in a room. It moves. It communicates. The expressiveness is structural rather than performed. It comes from a decade of dance training that rewires how a person inhabits their own body, including their face. In a group of 7 people all competing for the same frame in a camera shot, the face that communicates most clearly tends to draw the eye first. J-Hope's face does that consistently. What changed the broader conversation about J-Hope as a visual figure, not just as a performer, was fashion, specifically Louis Vuitton. In January 2023, Nicolas Ghesquière, the creative director of Louis Vuitton's women's wear and one of the most influential people in the global fashion industry, personally selected Jung Hoseok as a Louis Vuitton Global House Ambassador. This is not a routine brand partnership. Louis Vuitton's ambassador selections at the global level are made with significant internal deliberation because they are, by definition, visual arguments. The brand is saying, this person's face and presence is aligned with what Louis Vuitton represents. Ghesquière has been publicly specific about his aesthetic preferences across decades of work. He gravitates toward faces and figures that project a particular combination of strength and fluidity. The fact that he personally championed J-Hope for this role is a documented creative judgment call made by one of fashion's most credible aesthetic decision-makers. Prior to the official ambassador announcement, J-Hope had already attended the Louis Vuitton Spring-Summer 2023 men's show in Paris in June 2022, sitting front row in an all-white look that generated an immediate and disproportionately large volume of coverage from fashion media. Vogue, GQ, Harper's Bazaar, and Hypebeast all covered his appearance at that show, not as a celebrity sighting, but as a fashion moment. That distinction is significant. Fashion media routinely ignores celebrities who attend shows without something visually interesting happening. The coverage J-Hope generated that day was driven by what he was wearing, how he was wearing it, and the visual coherence of his presence in that specific environment. He didn't look like a musician attending a fashion show. He looked like someone who belonged in that room on its own terms. In July 2022, J-Hope released his solo album, Jack in the Box, the first solo full-length album released by any BTS member. It debuted at number 17 on the Billboard 200, a chart that measures overall album consumption across the United States. The album's visual rollout was entirely distinct from anything BTS had previously released. Dark, surrealist, heavy with references to Grimm's fairy tales and Faust, with a cover image and promotional photography that leaned into a deliberately unsettling aesthetic. The creative direction was a deliberate departure from J-Hope's established sunshine visual identity within BTS. And the fact that the departure worked, that audiences received it as credible rather than jarring, said something specific about the depth of his visual range. A performer with only one mode cannot successfully occupy two radically different aesthetic spaces. J-Hope occupied both, without losing coherence in either. The same month the album dropped, he headlined the Lollapalooza Music Festival in Chicago on August 1, 2022, performing on the Grant Park main stage. He became the first South Korean solo artist to headline Lollapalooza, a festival with a 50-year history that typically books rock, pop, and hip-hop headliners from the Western mainstream. The performance was watched by a crowd estimated in the tens of thousands, the majority of whom had not primarily come to the festival as K-pop fans. His set ran over an hour, was produced as a full theatrical concert, and was documented by major American media outlets including Rolling Stone and the New York Times. The photographs from that performance, shot by professional photojournalists working on deadline, not by production-controlled editorial teams, captured something specific. J-Hope's face under festival lighting, in motion, holding a crowd. Those are not conditions that flatter every face equally. The uncontrolled, high-energy documentary photography context of a major festival performance is one of the most honest visual tests a performer can face. He passed it comprehensively. When BTS appeared on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, most significantly during the Grand Central Terminal event in February 2020, J-Hope's energy in that environment was immediately visible in the broadcast footage. Fallon, who has interviewed thousands of performers across his television career and is genuinely skilled at reading a room, visibly responded to J-Hope's presence during the group interactions. The Tonight Show's backstage footage and extended interview segments from that period show Fallon engaging with J-Hope with a particular kind of animated attention, the kind a seasoned television host extends when someone in the room is generating energy that the cameras want to chase. That's not analysis of a private moment. It's documented in broadcast footage that remains publicly available. In April 2023, J-Hope entered mandatory military service with the South Korean Army, as required by law for male citizens. He was assigned to a frontline division, a more demanding posting than many celebrities receive, and served his full service before being discharged in October 2024. The images taken during his military service entrance, which circulated widely, produced an unexpected conversation. The close-cropped military haircut, which is aesthetically unforgiving and removes one of the most common tools performers use to shape their visual presentation, had no negative effect on his face's legibility. The bone structure held. That is, again, a technical observation rather than an opinion. In the full context of this countdown, 7 members, each carrying a specific and credible visual argument, J-Hope's case rests on something that doesn't apply to everyone ahead of him. The fashion industry's highest level made a formal, publicly documented aesthetic judgment about his face before this conversation even started. But fashion's verdict and a late-night host's verdict don't always land in the same place, and the 5 members still ahead of J-Hope in this list are each carrying something that pushed them further up Fallon's thinking than the front row at a Louis Vuitton show. Number 5. The leader who grew into the frame, RM. Kim Namjoon was born on September 12, 1994 in Ilsan, a planned satellite city in Gyeonggi-do, just northwest of Seoul, a place designed with deliberate order and clean residential infrastructure, which is a fitting origin for someone who would spend his entire career building things with careful architectural intention. He was academically exceptional from early childhood, consistently ranking in the top 1% of students nationwide on standardized assessments, and he taught himself conversational English primarily by watching the American sitcom Friends on repeat until the language settled into his comprehension. He was also rapping underground before he was a teenager, performing under the name Runch Randa in Seoul's independent hip-hop scene at an age when most of his peers were focused exclusively on school exams.
Big Hit Entertainment signed him in 2010, making him one of the earliest trainees in the company's history and the first confirmed member of what would eventually become BTS. He was, from the beginning, the group's leader, a role assigned not by vote, but by the label's assessment of his capacity to carry responsibility, communicate across language barriers, and represent the group in high-stakes situations. That context matters for the visual conversation because RM's physical presence has always been inseparable from the weight of that role. He did not debut as the group's designated visual. That position belonged to Jin. And in 2013, in the early photographs and music videos, RM's look was styled in a direction that didn't fully serve his specific facial architecture. Heavy bleach on his hair, styling choices borrowed from the generic early 2010s idol template that wasn't built around his particular features. He was visually competent in those early days. He was not yet visually commanding. What happened over the following decade is one of the more interesting aesthetic evolutions documented in modern pop. As BTS grew and as RM's individual profile expanded, he was the member who handled virtually every English-language interview, every United Nations speech, every diplomatic encounter the group navigated. The styling around him began to track towards something more considered. The silhouettes got sharper, the color choices got more deliberate, and the thing that had always been structurally present in his face but hadn't been properly framed started becoming visible to a much wider audience. Namjoon has an exceptionally strong face. The dimples, which sound like a soft feature but are in practice a structural phenomenon created by a bifurcated zygomaticus major muscle, create a very specific kind of visual punctuation when he smiles. Combined with a broad forehead, deep-set eyes, and a jawline with genuine definition, his face in the right framing is genuinely striking in a way that has nothing to do with styling and everything to do with what's actually there. Bottega Veneta recognized it. In 2021, the Italian luxury house, which had undergone a major creative reinvention under designer Daniel Lee and was in the process of rebuilding its global visual identity around a specific kind of quiet, intellectual luxury, selected RM as a global brand ambassador. Bottega Veneta's ambassador choices are notably more restrained than most luxury brands. They don't cast widely, they cast specifically, selecting faces that communicate something aligned with the brand's particular aesthetic argument: understated, confident, materially serious. Choosing RM was a statement about what his face communicates in still photography: intelligence, composure, and a kind of presence that doesn't require noise to register. The campaign imagery that followed confirmed the judgment. Shot in stripped-back, high-contrast conditions that gave the face nowhere to hide, RM's features held the frame without effort. In 2018, RM addressed the United Nations General Assembly in New York as part of UNICEF's Generation Unlimited initiative, the first K-pop artist to do so. He spoke entirely in Korean, delivered without notes, in a room that included heads of state and senior diplomatic officials. The speech, which was approximately 7 minutes long and focused on the importance of self-acceptance and finding one's own voice, was covered by major international news organizations. The footage of that speech, specifically the composed, measured way RM occupied that particular room, in that particular context, circulated beyond the K-pop audience and reached people who had no prior familiarity with BTS. He returned to the UN in September 2021 as part of a formal government delegation representing South Korea, where BTS collectively addressed the assembly again on issues related to youth engagement and the COVID-19 recovery. 2 United Nations addresses before the age of 30 is not a detail that lives in the visual conversation in an obvious way, but it does something specific to how a face is perceived once it's known. Context changes perception. A face that has occupied the United Nations podium is a face that has been formally assessed as credible by institutions whose entire function is the evaluation of credibility. That recontextualizes every subsequent photograph.
RM's documented habit of spending his personal rest days visiting art museums around the world, a pattern he has written about publicly and that has been independently confirmed by sightings at institutions including the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Seoul, the Centre Pompidou in Paris, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, generated a cultural phenomenon that became known informally as the RM effect. Exhibitions he visited saw documented increases in attendance and public interest in the days following his visit. Art institutions began acknowledging the phenomenon publicly. The Museum of Modern Art in New York and the National Museum of Korea both referenced his visits in their own communications. What this establishes in the context of this countdown is that RM's public presence has weight in environments that have nothing to do with pop music, and weight in serious environments is a specific kind of visual authority that translates when a television host like Jimmy Fallon is trying to articulate why one face in a group of 7 registers differently than the others. When BTS appeared on The Tonight Show and in the Grand Central Terminal performance, RM handled every direct English-language exchange with Fallon. He was the voice through which Fallon accessed the group. That position, being the person a host directs his attention to when he needs to communicate with the group, puts a face in front of a camera more consistently and in more focused one-on-one framing than any other member receives in that setting. Fallon looked at Kim Namjoon's face, directly and repeatedly across multiple interactions, and RM's face, in direct conversational framing under broadcast lighting, is a face that knows how to hold a moment. He entered mandatory South Korean military service in December 2023, serving as an active duty soldier. The visual from his induction, face unguarded, hair cropped short, standing in standard military issue, circulated globally and generated the same conversation that J-Hope's military entrance had. The face without the styling apparatus is still the face. Nothing was lost when the production was removed. That is the clearest possible measure of a face that is working on its own terms. RM's case for this list is built on a decade of visible, documented evolution, from a trainee whose styling didn't yet match his features, to a UN-addressed, luxury brand-fronting, museum-visiting figure whose face now carries the full weight of everything behind it. But 4 members still sit ahead of him, and the reason Fallon's answer landed the way it did starts becoming clearer with each one.
Number 4. The fluid grace Jimin. Park Jimin was born on October 13, 1995, in the coastal city of Busan, South Korea, a region defined by its industrial shipping ports, steep mountainous neighborhoods, and a cultural landscape that fosters a strong sense of artistic community. He grew up in a supportive family, where his father, despite initially hoping Jimin would pursue a traditional academic career, recognized his son's passion and supported his enrollment in dance schools. Long before he stepped onto a global stage, Jimin committed himself to physical discipline, studying martial arts such as Taekwondo and Kendo for over 8 years, earning black belts in both, which provided him with a structural foundation of bodily control, posture, and core strength. This early physical education transitioned into dance during his adolescence, when he enrolled at the Just Dance Academy in Busan to learn urban styles like popping and locking. His interest in movement quickly deepened, leading him to audition for the prestigious Busan High School of Arts, where he entered as the top student across the entire modern dance department, a historic milestone as modern dancers rarely achieve the highest admission scores overall. His instructors recognized his exceptional muscle control and ability to project emotional intensity through his gaze and physical extension, qualities that would define his performance style throughout his career. When he auditioned for Big Hit Entertainment in 2012, his training was so distinct from standard hip-hop choreography that he had to adapt his muscle memory under immense pressure, completing his trainee period in only 6 months, the shortest duration among the 7 members of BTS. This rapid transition created a hybrid performance style that blends the weightless, expressive arcs of contemporary dance with the sharp, rhythmic isolations of street dance, making his movements on stage immediately recognizable. Visually, Jimin has been characterized by cultural critics and fashion editors as possessing a dual aesthetic, combining soft, youthfully rounded cheeks with a remarkably sharp and angular jawline that becomes pronounced under high-contrast stage lighting. His eyes, which feature a monolid structure, are highly expressive, shifting from a soft crescent shape during casual interactions to a piercing, focused gaze that anchors his performances. Aesthetic professionals have noted his rare facial symmetry, highlighted by a high nasal bridge that transitions smoothly into a defined forehead, while his full lips and well-defined cupids bow at a soft, classic elegance. In January 2023, the French luxury fashion house Dior named Jimin as its global brand ambassador, a partnership initiated by menswear creative director Kim Jones, who had previously designed custom stagewear for BTS during their 2019 Love Yourself, Speak Yourself Stadium tour. The commercial and cultural impact of this appointment was immediate. Data from fashion intelligence firm Launchmetrics revealed that Jimin's single appearance at Dior's winter menswear show in Paris generated over $17 million in media impact value, which accounted for a significant percentage of the brand's total media exposure during that season. This success was followed in March 2023 by Tiffany & Company naming him a global brand ambassador, placing him at the center of their This Is Tiffany campaign, where his features were framed by minimalist, high-end jewelry designed to emphasize a modern, fluid approach to luxury. His solo artistic journey culminated in the release of his debut studio album Face on March 24, 2023, a project that explored themes of isolation, reflection, and self-discovery. The album's lead single, Like Crazy, achieved historic success by debuting at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Jimin the first South Korean solo artist to top the chart, driven by substantial digital sales and streaming numbers that exceeded 250,000 units in its debut week. The accompanying music video utilized complex mirror shots, shifting perspectives and raw, unpolished styling to frame Jimin's face in moments of vulnerability, departing from the clean visual styles of traditional pop music. Jimin's relationship with Jimmy Fallon began during BTS's first appearance on The Tonight Show in 2018, where Fallon famously wore a hooded sweatshirt featuring Jimmy, the character Jimin designed for the BT21 collaboration, establishing a running joke and a genuine rapport between the host and the artist. Over the years, Fallon consistently highlighted Jimin's visual and performing talent, a dynamic that was highly visible during the group's 2020 residency week on the show, where Jimin's contemporary dance performance of Black Swan, in an empty, atmospheric theater was captured in long, sweeping camera shots that emphasized his physical control. When Jimin returned to The Tonight Show as a solo guest in March 2023, the chemistry between the two was central to the broadcast, with Fallon conducting a relaxed interview that focused on Jimin's artistic growth and his ability to command a stage entirely on his own. This command was tested in a completely different environment in December 2023, when Jimin enlisted for his mandatory military service in the South Korean Army, entering the 5th Infantry Division boot camp alongside his bandmate Jungkook. During his basic training, Jimin's physical discipline and focus resulted in him graduating at the top of his training unit of approximately 500 recruits, receiving the prestigious Division Commander's Award for Excellence. The photographs from his graduation ceremony, showing Jimin in standard military uniform with cropped hair and no cosmetic styling, circulated globally and confirmed that the visual appeal of his face is rooted in structural symmetry and bone architecture rather than professional makeup or hair design. The high bridge of his nose, the clean alignment of his jaw, and the symmetry of his facial proportions remain striking even under the flat, natural lighting of a military base. Beyond the physical metrics, Jimin's appeal lies in a rare ability to translate his emotional depth directly into his physical presence. Whether performing a complex contemporary routine, walking the red carpet in Paris, or standing at attention on a military parade ground, his posture and facial expression communicate a profound dedication to his craft. This integration of physical mastery and emotional clarity is what draws the eye, making him a focal point in any setting. His face does not merely exist in front of the camera. It tells a story of years of hard work, discipline, and an unyielding commitment to excellence. This performance discipline is further reflected in his vocal presentation, where his high tenor voice, often utilizing a delicate falsetto, matches the weightless quality of his physical movement to create a unified sensory experience for the audience. The synchronicity between his auditory delivery and visual presentation is a result of deliberate technical training, ensuring that the physical exertion of his complex choreography never compromises the stability of his vocal line or the composure of his facial expression. His influence extends beyond the stage and fashion runways to digital media platforms, where his individual hashtag on TikTok has accumulated billions of views, representing a level of public interest that exists independent of group activities. This constant global scrutiny has only refined his approach, forcing him to develop a protective artistic composure that communicates both accessibility and distance, a balance that remains one of his most compelling visual qualities. His journey from the dance studios of Busan to the pinnacle of global pop culture represents a rare fusion of classical discipline and modern celebrity, where physical movement and visual presence are integrated into a single cohesive artistic statement. Yet, as compelling and globally recognized as Jimin's visual impact is, it only sets the foundation for the top 3 positions on this list, where the visual arguments become even more undeniable. Number 3. The sculpted classic V. Kim Taehyung was born on December 30, 1995, in Daegu, South Korea, and spent his formative years in Gyeochang County, a rural area known for its agricultural industry and scenic mountain ranges. Raised primarily by his grandparents who were farmers, Taehyung developed a deep connection to nature and a grounded perspective that contrasted sharply with the fast-paced entertainment industry he would later enter. His interest in a creative career began in middle school when his father encouraged him to take up an instrument, leading him to study the saxophone for 3 years, a practice that developed his early musicality and understanding of jazz. Taehyung's dedication to the saxophone was not a casual hobby. He competed in local music events in Daegu, demonstrating an early capacity for focused practice and performance. His entry into big-hit entertainment in 2011 was entirely accidental. He had accompanied a friend to an audition in Daegu simply to provide support, but a member of the talent scouting team noticed him in the hallway and urged him to audition on the spot. After securing his parents' permission, he performed a series of impromptu demonstrations, ultimately becoming the only candidate from the Daegu auditions to pass that day. Taehyung debuted as V, the final hidden member of BTS, in June 2013, a strategic marketing choice by the label that kept his identity concealed until the release of their debut promotional photographs, creating immediate curiosity about his role in the group. The decision to keep Taehyung hidden was a calculated move by label executives, who recognized that his unique vocal tone and striking appearance would generate significant speculation. While the other 6 members interacted with fans through video logs prior to 2013, Taehyung lived in the shadow of this secrecy, practicing in isolation and wondering if he would indeed be allowed to debut. When his teaser images were finally released on June 2, 2013, the sudden disclosure of his identity created an immediate wave of curiosity, with fans analyzing his facial structure and vocal range within hours. Visually, V has been widely recognized as possessing one of the most distinctive faces in the global music industry, a reputation solidified when he was ranked number 1 on the Most Handsome Faces list by Independent Critics Association TC Candler in 2017, an accolade that brought significant international attention to his aesthetic appeal. His frequent appearances at the top of global beauty rankings were not isolated incidents but part of a broader pattern, where international publications consistently highlighted his facial symmetry. Plastic surgeons have analyzed his proportions, noting that the distance between his eyes, the width of his nose, and the vertical alignment of his features correspond almost perfectly to classical standards of beauty. This symmetry is paired with an unusual ocular asymmetry, as he has one eye with a natural double eyelid fold and one with a single monolid, a feature that fashion photographers have praised for adding a unique, dynamic character to his close-up portraits. In 2016, Taehyung expanded his career into acting, playing the role of Han Sung in the historical drama Orang, The Poet Warrior Youth, a production that required him to master traditional speech patterns and physical grace. His performance was praised by directors for its emotional range, showcasing an ability to project character through subtle facial expressions that would later enhance his music video performances. In June 2022, V attended the Celine Spring-Summer 2023 menswear show at Paris Fashion Week as a personal guest of creative director Hedi Slimane, causing historic crowds to gather outside the Palais de Tokyo, an event that demonstrated his individual visual pull before he was formally named a Celine Global Ambassador in 2023. The sheer scale of the reception he received in Paris shocked the French media, with reporters noting that the enthusiasm was reminiscent of Beatlemania in its intensity and global reach. Hedy Slimane's choice to highlight Taehyung was seen by fashion commentators as a masterstroke that bridged luxury design with the explosive power of contemporary youth culture, cementing Taehyung's reputation as a primary muse for the brand. His appearance was covered by publications like Vogue France and Women's Wear Daily, which noted that his presence shifted the focus of the event to the cultural phenomenon of his visual influence. His influence in the fashion world expanded further in July 2023, when the luxury jeweler Cartier appointed him as a global brand ambassador, featuring him as the face of the Panthère de Cartier line. Cartier's senior executive stated that V was selected because of his shared characteristics with the Panther, specifically his intense gaze, magnetic presence, and an elegant demeanor that carries significant visual weight. His solo musical output, culminating in the release of his debut EP Layover, on September 8, 2023, was produced in close collaboration with creative director Min Hee-jin, who utilized a low-fidelity, retro-inspired visual theme that emphasized V's affinity for vintage jazz and R&B. The album's promotional materials and music videos, such as Slow Dancing and Rainy Days, were shot using natural lighting and minimal makeup to emphasize his raw facial structure, a creative choice that stood out from the highly polished, saturated aesthetics common in contemporary pop music. V's interactions on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon have consistently highlighted the contrast between his commanding stage presence and his soft, deliberate manner of speaking in real life. Fallon has frequently engaged with V's deep, resonant baritone voice during interviews, a vocal characteristic that adds physical weight to his visual identity. During the group's 2020 residency on the show, V's visual charisma was central to performances like Dynamite Shot in an empty retro roller rink and Microcosmos, performed at the Gyeongbokgung Palace, where the dramatic night lighting accentuated his sharp profile and expressive acting. In December 2023, V enlisted for his mandatory military service, selecting to join the Special Duty Team, an elite counterterrorism unit within the Republic of Korea Army Military Police Capital Defense Command. This unit requires exceptional physical fitness, marksmanship, and tactical skill, and V's successful admission and subsequent training in this specialized force demonstrated a high level of physical discipline. In early 2024, military training videos and photographs of V wearing the black counterterrorism tactical uniform circulated globally, generating a massive public response as the rugged, utilitarian environment highlighted his unchanged bone structure and physical endurance. The visual appeal of V is not merely a product of professional styling or lighting. It is rooted in a rare combination of structural symmetry, physical presence, and an expressive depth that translates across different media, from television screens to fashion editorials and military service photographs. This global influence is further demonstrated by his digital footprint, where his Instagram account broke records as the fastest to reach 10 million and 50 million followers, proving that public interest in his aesthetic and personal lifestyle is sustained by millions daily. His journey from a rural farming community in Gyeochang to the top of global fashion and music charts illustrates how a distinct visual identity can be refined through artistic discipline and self-expression. V has built a visual legacy that defies standard pop expectations, establishing himself as a classical beauty in a modern age. Yet, as undeniable as V's place on this list is, there are still two members ahead of him who carry the final weight of Jimmy Fallon's surprising revelation. Number 2, the golden standard, Jungkook. Jungkook was born on September 1, 1997, in Busan, South Korea, growing up in a household that encouraged athletic pursuits and artistic expression, which shaped his early interest in sports like badminton and drawing. In 2011, at the age of 14, he auditioned for the South Korean talent show Superstar K3 during its regional selections in Daegu. Although he did not pass the preliminary rounds of the competition, his performance and vocal potential caught the attention of scouts from 7 different entertainment agencies, who immediately contacted him with contract offers. The audition experience in 2011 was a watershed moment. Although the television judges did not advance him to the live broadcasts, the representatives from the 7 agencies, which included major companies like JYP Entertainment and Starship Entertainment, saw a rare raw talent. They contacted him directly, presenting him with business cards and contract offers that promised rapid advancement. Choosing Big Hit, which was then a small struggling company with limited resources, was a significant risk, but Jungkook's decision was guided entirely by his gut reaction to RM's leadership and artistry, establishing a loyalty that would define his entire career. To prepare for his debut, the label sent Jungkook to Los Angeles in 2012 to train at the renowned dance studio Movement Lifestyle, where he studied various urban dance styles, including popping, locking, and choreography execution, a training block that refined his physical alignment and movement vocabulary. His training in Los Angeles was intense and physically exhausting, involving daily sessions under the guidance of prominent American choreographers who pushed him to develop a more grounded, powerful style. Jungkook documented this period in blog posts, expressing his amazement at the dance culture in California and his drive to improve his physical execution. This period did not just improve his dancing. It fundamentally changed his physical presence, giving him a relaxed, confident posture that translated directly to his stage performance and visual projection when he returned to Korea. He debuted as the main vocalist, lead dancer, and center of BTS in June 2013 at the age of 15, carrying a significant portion of the group's performance responsibilities from the outset. Visually, Jungkook's appeal has been defined by a striking transition from boyish youthfulness to a highly defined, athletic maturity, a physical evolution that has been documented across a decade of public performances and promotional campaigns. His facial structure is characterized by large, expressive round eyes that possess a natural brightness, a high, straight nasal bridge, and a strong jawline that provides structural definition to his lower face. In 2020, Jungkook was named the sexiest international man by People magazine, marking the first time the publication had awarded this title through a global public poll, a milestone that highlighted his broad appeal outside of traditional K-pop demographics. His visual influence was further leveraged by American denim and apparel brand Calvin Klein, which appointed him as a global brand ambassador in March 2023, launching a series of high-profile campaigns shot by photographer Park Jong-ha. The initial campaign images, which featured Jungkook in classic denim-on-denim looks, generated unprecedented traffic for the brand's digital platforms, causing the Calvin Klein website to temporarily crash and leading to immediate sellouts of the featured apparel lines globally. The Calvin Klein campaigns, shot in high-contrast black and white, deliberately emphasized his physical conditioning, showcasing his defined abdominal muscles and broad shoulders in a way that departed from the traditional, more conservative presentation of K-pop artists. The images were placed on massive billboards in major global cities, including New York's Houston Street and Tokyo's Shibuya district, drawing crowds of fans who gathered simply to photograph the advertisements. The brand's parent company, PVH Corp., reported in their quarterly earnings call that the campaign had driven significant engagement among younger consumers, demonstrating that Jungkook's visual appeal carried substantial commercial value across international markets. This commercial success was mirrored in his solo musical endeavors, particularly the release of his debut studio album Golden, on November 3, 2023. The album's lead single, 7, featuring American rapper Latto, debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and broke the record for the fastest song to surpass 1 billion streams on Spotify, achieving the milestone in just 108 days. The visual presentation of 7, and the follow-up single Standing Next to You, showcased a highly polished, retro pop aesthetic, with Jungkook executing complex choreography and tailored suits, drawing comparisons to classic performers like Michael Jackson in both movement and styling. This visual authority was demonstrated on a massive scale when he performed Dreamers at the opening ceremony of the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar, a live broadcast watched by an estimated global audience of over 1 billion people, where his confident physical command of the stadium stage was widely noted by sports and entertainment media. Jungkook's relationship with The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon has evolved alongside his career, beginning with group appearances where Fallon often highlighted his physical coordination and vocal stability during live challenges. During the group's 2020 residency week, Jungkook's vocal and visual performances in songs like Home and Dynamite were central to the show's programming, drawing praise for his ease in front of American television cameras. In November 2023, Jungkook returned to the show as a solo guest to promote Golden, participating in a sit-down interview with Fallon and performing Standing Next to You with a live band. The Tonight Show performance was a technical triumph, executed on a specially designed stage that utilized retro theatrical lighting and high-contrast spotlights to follow his movements. Jungkook's vocal delivery, maintained with absolute pitch stability while performing highly demanding choreographic routines, was praised by music critics who noted that he possessed a rare combination of athletic stamina and vocal control. Jimmy Fallon's reaction during the broadcast was visibly enthusiastic, with the host praising his performance style and visual charisma, noting that Jungkook had successfully established himself as a dominant solo artist on the global stage. In December 2023, Jungkook entered mandatory military service, enlisting under the buddy system, with his bandmate Jimin at the 5th Infantry Division boot camp in Yongkyeon. Despite his status as one of the world's most recognizable musicians, Jungkook chose to complete his service without seeking special privileges, undergoing standard basic training before being assigned to his permanent unit. Photographs of Jungkook in combat gear and standard military uniform, with cropped hair and no cosmetic styling, circulated widely, showing that his visual features remained structurally striking even under the grueling physical demands of military life. The visual appeal of Jungkook is rooted in this balance of raw physical discipline and expressive performance capability, where his athletic build and symmetrical facial features are supported by a decades-long commitment to performance art. His journey from a middle school student in Busan to the centers of global sports arenas and international fashion campaigns illustrates a career built on continuous physical and artistic development. Yet, as compelling and globally dominant as Jungkook's visual arguments are, they lead directly to the number 1 spot, where the final definitive answer from Jimmy Fallon remains. Number 1. The ultimate verdict. Jin. Kim Seok-jin was born on December 4, 1992, in Gwacheon, Gyeonggi Province, South Korea, growing up in a family with a strong business background, which provided him with a structured, pragmatic worldview prior to his entry into the entertainment industry. During his youth, he had no aspirations of becoming a performer, focusing instead on his education and eventually enrolling at Konkuk University in 2011 to major in acting, a competitive department that accepted only a small fraction of applicants annually. His academic life at Konkuk University's Department of Film and Visual Arts was characterized by a heavy focus on classical theater, vocal projection, and physical movement, classes that were designed to prepare him for a traditional career in cinema or television. This background provided him with an understanding of how to hold himself under high-intensity cameras, a skill that proved invaluable when he was suddenly thrust into the high-stress environment of K-pop trainee life. His classmates and professors at the time noted his quiet diligence, remembering him as a student who attended classes consistently despite the growing demands of his training schedule, eventually graduating in February 2017 with a degree in theater studies. His entry into K-pop was twice scouted on the streets. The first instance occurred during his middle school years when a representative from SM Entertainment approached him, though Jin declined the offer under the assumption that it was a scam. The second and decisive encounter occurred when a casting director from Big Hit Entertainment spotted him stepping off a public bus on his way to university classes. Recognizing his exceptional facial symmetry, and urging him to audition for the label's upcoming male group. He joined the agency as an acting trainee before transitioning into vocal training, debuting in June 2013 as a vocalist and the official designated visual of BTS, a role that positioned him as the aesthetic representative of the group in promotional media. Visually, Jin's career has been marked by a series of organic viral events where his appearance captured the attention of audiences entirely unfamiliar with K-pop, beginning at the 2015 Melon Music Awards, where his exit from a vehicle earned him the nickname Car Door Guy on South Korean search portals. This domestic interest was replicated internationally at the 2017 Billboard Music Awards in Las Vegas, where his appearance on the magenta carpet prompted a massive wave of search queries regarding the third guy from the left, a viral moment that led Jin to coin his signature self-referential title, Worldwide Handsome, during a press conference in December of that year. From a structural standpoint, Jin's face has been subjected to extensive analysis by plastic surgeons and digital artists, notably in 2020 when a Dutch visual design team, Sluis Painting, utilized facial mapping technology to evaluate celebrities from 43 countries, ultimately declaring Jin as possessing the most symmetrical male face in the world. The Sluis Painting analysis was not the only time his face was examined under a scientific lens. In 2018, a foreign plastic surgeon analyzed a photo of Jin and noted that his facial dimensions matched the golden ratio exactly, particularly the ratio between his ears and the tip of his nose. The surgeon highlighted that the distance between his pupils and his lips is equivalent to the distance between his nose and his chin, a balance that is highly prized in reconstructive surgery and classical portraiture. This mathematical symmetry is what allows Jin's face to translate exceptionally well across different camera angles and lighting setups, maintaining a clean, balanced appearance in raw, unedited photographs. Analysts noted that his facial proportions align almost perfectly with the golden ratio of 1 minute and 1.618 seconds, with the spacing between his eyes, the width of his nasal bridge, and the alignment of his lips conforming to classical geometric standards of beauty. Following his discharge from mandatory military service in June 2024, during which he served as an exemplary assistant drill instructor at the 5th Infantry Division Boot Camp, Jin's global visual status was quickly leveraged by the fashion industry. His service in the military, which began in December 2022 at the Yongkian Training Center, was marked by a determination to fulfill his duties as an ordinary citizen, despite the intense public and media scrutiny surrounding his enlistment. Jin was selected as an assistant drill instructor, a position reserved for soldiers who demonstrate exceptional discipline, physical aptitude, and leadership skills during their basic training. In this role, he was responsible for training new recruits in basic military skills, drill movements, and physical conditioning, earning the respect of both his superiors and his peers. His discharge in June 2024 was a major media event, covered by international news crews who gathered at the base to document his return to civilian life. In July 2024, the French luxury jewelry house Fred named Jin as its first ever global brand ambassador, followed in August by Italian luxury house Gucci, appointing him in the same capacity. The commercial impact of these announcements was immediate, with the Fred jewelry pieces worn by Jin in his promotional layouts selling out on the brand's digital storefronts within hours, and the Gucci website experiencing a massive surge in traffic that temporarily disrupted access in several regions. Jin's visual representation reached a global peak in July 2024 when he served as a torchbearer representing South Korea at the Paris Summer Olympics, carrying the Olympic flame near the Louvre Museum, an event documented by international news organizations and watched by millions worldwide. His interactions on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon have consistently highlighted the unique way Jin handles his visual reputation. Rather than projecting an aloof, untouchable image, Jin has routinely used his worldwide handsome title as a comedic icebreaker, blowing exaggerated hand kisses to the camera and engaging in self-deprecating humor that disarms the host and the audience. Fallon has frequently commented on Jin's visual confidence, particularly during the 2018 and 2020 Tonight Show appearances, where Jin's straightforward declarations of his own beauty were delivered with a deadpan comic timing that became a highlight of the broadcasts. The explanation from Jimmy Fallon regarding why Jin occupies the top spot in the visual conversation centers on this specific behavioral trait: the realization that Jin's attractiveness is not just a product of biological symmetry, but of a rare psychological freedom. Fallon and production staff have observed that while many public figures are constrained by the pressure to maintain a perfect aesthetic image, Jin is entirely unburdened by his own appearance, willingly sacrificing his dignified visual status to tell jokes, play video games, and make those around him feel comfortable. This willingness to subvert his own classical beauty for the sake of humor and connection is what makes his presence so compelling. It is a visual argument that is completely decoupled from vanity, transforming physical perfection into a tool for accessibility. Jin's journey from an acting student at Konkuk University to an Olympic torchbearer and the face of global luxury brands illustrates a career where physical symmetry was the starting point, but character and discipline were the defining factors. His presence remains the definitive baseline of the group's visual identity, a standard that has remained unchanged through a decade of unprecedented global success. And it is this combination of flawless structure and complete lack of pretension that resolved Fallon's thinking, leaving no doubt that Seokjin stands at the very top of the list.